everybody. I'm Laura Trump coming to you from Trump Tower in New York City. Like a true leader, President Trump has proven to be clear, transparent, and consistent in all of his policies. From Iran to China to the Democrats, Donald Trump means what he says and says what he means. Joining me to discuss the latest examples of Trump transparency is a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony, we love having you on. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, Laura, thanks for having me on again. I always enjoy being on with you. Thank you.
So President Trump just enacted the first round of sanctions against Iran, which he promised when he withdrew from the Obama-Iran nuclear deal.
Right.
Isn't this another example of how the president always follows through on his pledges, especially in high-stakes deals like this?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And Laura, what people, I think, need to really look at here is the fact he was very thoughtful about the process. He tried to engage Congress. He actually brought in folks to have a dialogue about this. And in the end, after doing all the research, considering all the issues, he followed through. And he did it in such a way to be effective, not simply to fulfill a campaign promise, but to actually do what's necessary in a way that will actually enhance national security. So I think that the fact that he does this in such a way, he didn't just snap it and go do it. He did the research, brought in the folks involved, and then implemented the policy which is most effective. So I think that's why we're now seeing a gradual reintroduction of sanctions, which, by the way, did work the first time. And I think the way he's doing it will be very effective in pushing the Iranians in the direction we need to see them go.
Yeah, and he also promised that a second round of sanctions against Iran will go into effect in November. What do you think it's going to take for Iran to come to the negotiating table for a real denuclearization deal?
Three things. First, we need to continue to essentially isolate them economically. Another thing that just happened, we had the Germans finally decide to not support sending some additional cash to the Iranians. That's huge. This is Rick Grinnell's work in Germany. God bless Rick Grinnell and Ambassador Grinnell for doing the great job he's doing there. With that said, we've got to focus on other issues relating to their military capability as well. The Saudi Arabians and the Egyptians are currently in a ground war in Yemen trying to oppose the Houthi rebels who are being supported by the Iranians. So we cannot permit a continued expansion of Iranian aggression in the Middle East. So that's number two. Number three, we need to look at how we can help the people of Iran, Persians, throw off the yoke of the theocracy which they live under. To include women's rights. Laura, I look at all the protests against the president here by women, and it's like, do they not understand that a whole country of women in Iran are being essentially abused and treated as second-class citizens by a government? So it boggles the mind that we misplace the appropriate social pressure that should be brought to bear on the mullahs to make them change. So those three things, economic, military, and democracy, pushing our values. I'll just say this right out for the record. I do believe we should look at a regime change. I'm not saying it should be the policy. I'm saying the people of Iran should rise up and push off the chains which bind them to these crazy men who want nuclear weapons. It's something we should support.
And you make a great point. This is a president, by the way, who is trying to do the right thing here, yet he does have so many people who are obstructionists and resisting him day in and day out. And, the things that you just mentioned are very, very serious. Hopefully, the citizens of this country will feel like the president of the United States, at least, is trying to help get, what needs to happen happen there. And I would love nothing more than to see something positive in that space of the world. Now, something else that happened recently, as President Trump vowed, the remains of 55 fallen American servicemen from the Korean War were just returned home, with Vice President Pence on hand for the solemn ceremony.
Our nation has worked tirelessly to keep our sacred promise to leave no man behind. As our president entered into negotiations with North Korea, he also had our fallen on his heart. Our president also secured a promise from Chairman Kim to return the remains of all fallen U.S. service members lost in North Korea.
Tony, this was such an incredible speech by the vice president, such a historic moment really for our country and our country as it relates to North Korea. Why did the fake news media choose to ignore this historic moment that has such huge implications for peace with North Korea?
Well, I think to your point, I mean, this was probably Vice President Pence's finest speech and finest moment relating to carrying out a solemn ceremony. And Laura, three terms come to mind. First, shameful. That the media chose to ignore this. This disrespects every service member who served in North Korea and their families. Secondly, disrespectful to the republic to which we actually have to work and support and defend. This shows the American media, the mainstream media, is completely out of touch with the American people. And to that point, it was completely indicative of where we are regarding the American people pushing for those great things to happen that President Trump wants to happen, like this return of dead from the Korean War. The American media could care less because it doesn't fit the agenda and narrative they're trying to paint of the president. So it's totally reflective of who they are, not who the president is, not who the service members are, or not who we are trying to help support this great agenda to try to get the American people strong, healthy, and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and Tony, I cannot help but think for so many families across this country, what closure this must bring for them. On top of obviously what it means for, our relationship with North Korea. The fact that Kim Jong-un kept his promise on this and actually did what he said he was going to do, sent these soldiers back home to their rightful resting place here in the United States of America. But think about, for everybody out there that has a family member or a friend that has served our country, about never knowing what happened to them, never having, them back home. It's got to be so great for these families to finally have closure.
Well, think about this. Kim Il-sung, the father of Un, actually tried to do a deal on this was part of the original nuclear deal back in '94, Laura. So think about this. They started this back under Bill Clinton, and they got, basically sold a bill of goods. They would give us remains here and there through the demilitarized zone. Here we are all these years later, finally a promise made back in the 90s is being fulfilled because of the courage and pressure of this president on UN.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff. And we know we don't have to question the president's support for our military. He is the biggest proponent of our military. Tell me, what is at stake for our national security, Tony, in the midterm elections this fall, with that in mind?
It's huge. Look, there's several things which the president set in motion which I think are hugely important to protecting the American people. The border wall, it's got to be built. I think we have to go in that direction rapidly. President Trump has also talked about voter security, paper ballots, things like that. I'm working with members of Congress right now on legislation to support that. So this is hugely important. The president is also looking at the future. He's trying right now to reinsinuate American power, not to be imperial, but to protect the American people. This is a big issue. He has made it very clear he doesn't want us in Syria. Many of us support that. The idea, we cannot be the global policeman. With that said, we must be wherever we need to be regarding our interests, protecting the American people or helping our allies. He's reinvigorating NATO. He's getting NATO to pay the right amount that they should be. He's actually talking about a Middle Eastern Arab NATO, which we've worked on the London Center since before the president came into office. These are all great things, plus a vision of the future to protect not only America, but the entire planet with the Space Force he's now trying to put in place. These are all hugely important national security issues which would not be moving forward if not for President Trump's leadership. That's the bottom line. The one factor which makes this all work is his pushing the envelope and trying to get things done. So that's what's in stake for this election this fall, to make sure that he continues to have a Congress who's willing to engage and help him fulfill these promises to the American people.
That's right. If everybody is happy with the direction the country is going with these incredible things like you just mentioned, we have to get out. We have to vote in the midterms and make sure that we are putting Trump-supporting Republicans in Congress. It's probably the most important thing we can do until we re-elect Donald Trump in 2020, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I would encourage the president to get out and do leadership by walking around. Go look at the military, look at the great people who are serving the country, who want to do the right thing. And to your point, Laura, the president must continue to do that great leadership that his base loves. That's what's going to drive people to help support the agenda, go to the polls and support the president. This is all going in the right direction and very important.
All right, Tony, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for joining me as always,
Laura.
and thank you for your great service to our country.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me too. As President Trump rejects conventional methods and blazes new trails, the world should know that he means what he says and says what he means. That's the real news for today. I'm Laura Trump from Trump Tower in New York City. Goodbye, everybody.